The gunshot shattered the afternoon like breaking glass. Sarah Martinez felt her knees buckle as she watched her golden retriever, Buddy, collapse on the front lawn, his tail still wagging weakly against the freshly cut grass. The crimson stain spread beneath his honey-colored fur, while her 8-year-old son Miguel's scream pierced the air, a sound that would haunt her dreams for months to come. "No! No! No!" Sarah's voice cracked as she stumbled forward, her hands reaching desperately toward her beloved companion. The officer who had fired the shot stood frozen, his weapon still drawn, his face pale with the realization of what he had just done. Behind him, his partner spoke rapidly into his radio, the crackling static mixing with Miguel's sobs and the distant sound of sirens growing louder. 30 minutes earlier, the Martinez family had been living in a different world entirely. The backyard barbecue was in full swing, with Sarah's husband Carlos flipping burgers on the grill while their teenage daughter Elena helped arrange fruit salad on the picnic table. The late spring afternoon was perfect, with temperatures in the 70s and a gentle breeze carrying the scent of blooming jasmine from their neighbor's garden. Buddy had been doing what he did best, serving as the family's unofficial therapy dog and social coordinator. The 3-year-old golden retriever moved between family members with practiced ease, his presence calming and reassuring. When Miguel had one of his anxiety episodes earlier that morning, Buddy had instinctively placed his head on the boy's lap, his warm brown eyes providing the comfort that words couldn't offer. "Look at him go." Carlos had chuckled, watching Buddy perform his signature trick of balancing a tennis ball on his nose. "That dog's got more social skills than half the people I work with." Elena had rolled her eyes at her father's joke while scratching behind Buddy's ears. "He's not just a dog, Dad. He's family." The 17-year-old had grown up with Buddy since she was 14, and their bond was unbreakable. When she had struggled with depression during her sophomore year, Buddy had somehow sensed her pain and rarely left her side during the darkest months. Sarah had smiled at the interaction, remembering how Buddy had come into their lives during her own battle with breast cancer 3 years earlier. The oncologist had suggested pet therapy, and Buddy had been specifically trained to provide emotional support for families dealing with medical trauma. His certification papers hung framed in Sarah's home office, a testament to his specialized training and gentle temperament. The afternoon had unfolded with the easy rhythm of a family, comfortable in their own space. Carlos grilled vegetables alongside the meat, accommodating Elena's recent decision to become vegetarian. Miguel worked on a jigsaw puzzle at the picnic table while Buddy supervised, occasionally nudging a piece with his nose when the boy seemed stuck. Sarah moved between the kitchen and the patio, bringing out drinks and side dishes, pausing occasionally to take photos of these perfect, ordinary moments. Their neighbor Karen Hutchinson had been watching from her second-story window, her face twisted with the familiar expression of disapproval that had become her trademark since moving to Maple Street 2 years earlier. Karen was 62, recently divorced, and seemed to view her new neighborhood as a personal affront to her vision of suburban perfection. The Martinez family, with their weekend gatherings and children's laughter, represented everything she found objectionable about modern life. "That dog is getting aggressive again," she muttered to herself, though Buddy was simply playing fetch with Miguel in the backyard. The sight of the golden retriever running freely, his joy evident in every bound and leap, filled Karen with an inexplicable rage. She had been documenting what she called incidents for months, photographing Buddy whenever he barked at a squirrel or approached the fence line between their properties. Karen's obsession with the Martinez family had started small, with complaints about music volume during weekend gatherings and pointed remarks about property maintenance when she encountered Sarah at the mailbox. But her fixation had grown more intense after the family had politely declined her suggestion that they remove the small vegetable garden that bordered their shared fence line. Some people have no consideration for their neighbors. Karen had told her sister during their weekly phone call. That dog runs wild, and those children are constantly making noise. This used to be a respectable neighborhood. As the Martinez family enjoyed their barbecue, Karen made her decision. She had been waiting for the right moment, and something about the sight of Buddy playing freely in the yard triggered her into action. She picked up her phone and dialed 911, her voice adopting the panicked tone she had rehearsed in her mind. 911. What's your emergency? There's a dangerous dog loose in my neighborhood. Karen spoke quickly, her words tumbling together in manufactured urgency. It's acting very aggressively toward people, and I'm afraid someone's going to get hurt. The animal appears to be rabid or something. It's a large breed, and it's approaching children. Please send help immediately. The dispatcher, trained to prioritize potential threats to public safety, took down Karen's address and began routing the call to the appropriate units. Ma'am, can you describe the dog's behavior? Is it currently threatening anyone? Karen peered through her blinds at Buddy, who was now lying peacefully in the shade, while Miguel petted his ears. Yes, it's showing clear signs of aggression, baring its teeth, acting unpredictably. I think it might have already bitten someone. You need to send officers right away before this gets worse. Within minutes, 2 patrol cars were dispatched to Maple Street. Officers Jake Morrison and Patricia Valdez had been partners for 6 months, both relatively new to the force and eager to prove themselves capable of handling emergency situations. Morrison, 26 and fresh out of the academy, had heard numerous stories about dangerous dog calls during training. Valdez, 31 and more experienced, had seen her share of animal-related incidents during her 5 years on the force. As they drove toward the address, Morrison felt his adrenaline building. Command said the caller reported aggressive behavior and possible rabies symptoms. He told his partner, "Sounds like we might need animal control backup." Valdez nodded grimly. "Better safe than sorry. These situations can escalate quickly, especially if there are kids around." She radioed for additional units while Morrison focused on the approaching neighborhood. Neither officer questioned the validity of the call or considered that the situation might be different from what they had been told. The Martinez family was finishing their meal when they noticed the police cars pulling up to the curb. Carlos looked up from his conversation with Elena about her college applications, his brow furrowing with confusion. "That's strange. Wonder what's going on." Sarah felt a flutter of anxiety in her chest. Maybe there was an accident somewhere nearby. She instinctively moved closer to Miguel, who had paused his puzzle to watch the officers approaching their front yard. Buddy, ever the social ambassador, had noticed the newcomers and trotted toward the front of the house, his tail wagging with the friendly enthusiasm he showed to all visitors. His golden fur caught the afternoon sunlight as he moved with the fluid grace that made golden retrievers such beloved family pets. To the officers, however, his approach looked different through the lens of their preconceived expectations. "There's the animal," Morrison said, his hand moving instinctively to his service weapon. "Look at the size of that thing." Valdez felt her own tension rising as she observed Buddy's approach. The dog's size, combined with the urgency of the 911 call, created a dangerous perceptual filter that transformed normal canine behavior into perceived threats. "Sir," she called out to Carlos, who was now standing near the patio, "please call your dog back immediately." Carlos looked confused, but complied. "Buddy, come here." "Boy." But Buddy, trained to greet visitors and provide comfort to people in distress, continued his friendly approach toward the officers. His tail wagged faster, and he lowered his head slightly in the submissive posture that dog trainers recognized as peaceful body language. Morrison's training kicked in, but it was training filtered through the false information provided by Karen's call. The dog is not responding to commands, he reported into his radio. Approaching, despite verbal warnings, requesting immediate backup. Sarah felt ice forming in her veins as she realized what was happening. "Officers, please. There's been a mistake," she called out, her voice rising with panic. "Buddy is a therapy dog. He's completely harmless. He's just trying to greet you." But the officers were operating under the assumption that they were dealing with a dangerous animal. Morrison drew his weapon as Buddy continued his approach, the dog's friendly demeanor lost in translation through the officer's heightened state of alert. Valdez also drew her sidearm, creating a devastating tableau that would replay in the Martinez family's nightmares for years to come. "Stop right there," Morrison shouted at the dog. But Buddy, trained to respond to human distress by offering comfort, interpreted the raised voices as a signal that these people needed his help. He increased his pace slightly, his brown eyes fixed on Morrison with the focused attention that made him such an effective therapy animal. Elena had run to the front yard, her 17-year-old mind unable to process the surreal scene unfolding before her. "Don't hurt him," she screamed, her voice breaking with the intensity of her fear. "He's never hurt anyone. He's a trained therapy dog." Miguel had followed his sister, his 8-year-old legs carrying him as fast as they could toward his beloved companion. "Buddy," he called, his voice high and thin with terror. "Come here. Buddy." The convergence of family members running toward the scene only heightened the officer's sense that the situation was spiraling out of control. Morrison, his finger on the trigger, made a split-second decision based on training that prioritized officer safety above all other considerations. As Buddy reached the edge of the front lawn, still wagging his tail and showing no signs of aggression, Morrison fired. The sound of the gunshot seemed to suspend time itself. Buddy's forward momentum carried him a few more steps before he collapsed, his golden body hitting the grass with a thump that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden silence. The tail that had been wagging with joy just seconds earlier gave a few final reflexive movements before falling still. Miguel's scream tore through the afternoon air like a physical force. "Buddy!" The 8-year-old threw himself toward his fallen pet, his small hands reaching desperately for the dog's motionless form. Sarah caught her son just before he reached Buddy's body, her own sobs mixing with his as she pulled him against her chest. Elena stood frozen in shock, her teenage mind unable to process the reality of what had just occurred. "You killed him," she whispered, her voice barely audible. Then, louder, her words carrying the raw pain of a young person watching innocence die. "You killed him. He was just saying hello. He was just being friendly." Carlos ran toward his family, his face twisted with a combination of grief and rage that threatened to overwhelm his ability to think clearly. "What have you done?" he demanded, his voice shaking with emotion. "That dog has never hurt anyone in his life. He was a certified therapy animal." Officer Morrison lowered his weapon, the reality of what had transpired beginning to penetrate the adrenaline-fueled haze that had driven his actions. Buddy lay motionless on the grass, his golden fur now matted with blood, his brown eyes staring sightlessly at the sky he would never see again. The officer felt his stomach clench as he realized that nothing about the scene matched the emergency call they had received. Valdez was already on her radio, calling for a supervisor and medical personnel, though it was clear that no medical intervention could help Buddy now. "Control. We need a supervisor at this location immediately. We have a—" She paused, struggling to find the right words. "We have a situation that requires immediate attention." Neighbors began emerging from their houses, drawn by the sound of the gunshot and the subsequent screaming. Mrs. Chen, from across the street, who had watched Buddy grow from a puppy, stood with her hand over her mouth in horror. The Williams family from 2 houses down had children who regularly played with Miguel, and they knew Buddy as the gentle giant who had never shown an ounce of aggression toward anyone. Karen Hutchinson watched from her window, a complex mix of emotions playing across her face. She had gotten what she wanted, in a sense, but the reality of the scene below was far more brutal and final than she had imagined. The sight of the grieving family, the dead dog, and the gathering crowd of shocked neighbors began to penetrate the bubble of self-righteous anger that had driven her to make the false report. As the Martinez family knelt around Buddy's still form, their tears falling onto his golden fur, the first threads of a larger tragedy began to weave themselves into the fabric of their community. News of the shooting spread quickly through social media and neighborhood networks, and within hours, the story would reach far beyond the borders of Maple Street. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, Buddy's veterinarian, received the devastating news from Sarah's tearful phone call just as she was finishing her evening rounds. The veterinarian who had overseen Buddy's therapy dog training and certification felt her heart sink as she listened to the barely coherent account of the shooting. "Sarah, I'm so sorry," Dr. Walsh said, her professional composure cracking. "Buddy was one of the gentlest animals I've ever worked with. This is absolutely heartbreaking." "They said he was dangerous." Sarah sobbed into the phone. "The police said someone called and reported him as aggressive." "Dr. Walsh, you know Buddy. You've seen his training records. Could anyone who knew him ever think he was dangerous?" Dr. Walsh's mind was already working, her veterinary training and experience with therapy animals providing a framework for understanding what had gone wrong. "Sarah, I need you to listen to me carefully. Buddy's training records, his certification, his behavioral evaluations, all of that documentation could be crucial. Don't let anyone tell you that this was justified." The veterinarian stayed on the phone with Sarah for another 20 minutes, offering comfort and practical advice in equal measure. As she hung up, Dr. Walsh made her own series of phone calls, reaching out to the therapy dog organization that had certified Buddy and to animal rights advocates who specialized in cases involving police shootings of family pets. By evening, the Martinez family's tragedy had attracted the attention of local news outlets. Reporter Amanda Chen, from Channel 7 News, had covered similar stories in other cities and recognized the potential significance of this case. She arrived at Maple Street as the police were finishing their initial investigation, her camera crew documenting the bloodstain on the front lawn and the family's ongoing grief. "This is a certified therapy dog," Amanda reported during her live broadcast. According to family members and veterinary records, this golden retriever had no history of aggression and was specifically trained to provide emotional support. The question now is how a routine 911 call resulted in the death of a beloved family pet. The story gained traction quickly on social media, with the hashtag #CheechAJusticeForBuddy beginning to trend within hours of the initial news reports. Animal lovers, civil rights advocates, and ordinary citizens who had grown tired of seeing innocent pets killed during police encounters shared the story thousands of times, each repost adding to the growing momentum for accountability. Karen Hutchinson found herself thrust into an uncomfortable spotlight as neighbors and reporters began investigating the source of the 911 call. Mrs. Chen, who had witnessed Karen's increasing hostility toward the Martinez family over the past months, was among the first to speak publicly about the pattern of complaints and conflicts. "That woman has been trying to cause problems for that family since she moved here," Mrs. Chen told Amanda Chen during an on-camera interview. She's complained about everything from their music to their garden. She seemed to have a particular problem with their dog, even though Buddy was the sweetest animal you could ever meet. As the investigation into the shooting began, Detective Sarah Rodriguez was assigned to review the case. A 15-year veteran of the force with specialized training in crisis de-escalation, Rodriguez approached the evidence with the thoroughness that had made her one of the department's most respected investigators. The 911 recording was her first stop. As she listened to Karen's panicked report of an aggressive dog threatening children, Rodriguez noted the inconsistencies between the caller's description and the physical evidence at the scene. There were no reports of injuries, no witnesses to corroborate the aggressive behavior, and no evidence that Buddy had ever posed a threat to anyone. "This doesn't add up," Rodriguez told her supervisor, Captain Michael Torres, as they reviewed the case file. The caller reported rabid behavior and immediate threats to public safety, but every witness account describes a friendly dog approaching officers with typical golden retriever behavior. Captain Torres, who was feeling pressure from both the media attention and his own officers' concerns about the shooting, nodded grimly. What about the officers' response? Was it within protocol? Rodriguez had reviewed the body camera footage multiple times, and each viewing made her more uncomfortable with what she saw. Technically, they followed protocol for responding to reports of dangerous animals, but the protocol assumes that the initial report is accurate. If the 911 call was false or exaggerated, then the entire response was based on false premises. The detective's investigation led her inevitably to Karen Hutchinson's door. The confrontation took place 3 days after the shooting, with Rodriguez accompanied by Officer Lisa Park, a community liaison specialist trained in de-escalation techniques. Karen answered the door with the defensive posture of someone who knew her actions were under scrutiny. "I suppose you're here about the dog incident," she said, her voice carrying a brittleness that hadn't been present during her 911 call. "Mrs. Hutchinson, I need to ask you some questions about your emergency call on Sunday afternoon," Rodriguez began, her tone professional but firm. "Can you walk me through exactly what you observed that led you to believe there was an immediate threat to public safety?" Karen's story began to unravel under careful questioning. Her description of aggressive behavior didn't match any of the physical evidence, and her claims about the dog threatening children were directly contradicted by multiple witness accounts. As Rodriguez pressed for specific details, Karen's responses became increasingly vague and contradictory. "The dog was acting strange," Karen insisted, but she couldn't explain what specific behaviors had alarmed her. "It was running around in the yard, and I thought it might be rabid or something. I was concerned for the safety of the neighborhood children." Rodriguez had interviewed enough witnesses to know that Buddy had been playing fetch with Miguel when Karen made her call. "Mrs. Hutchinson, multiple witnesses report that the dog was playing in his own backyard with family members. Can you explain how you interpreted normal play behavior as a threat requiring emergency response?" The carefully constructed justifications that Karen had built in her mind began to crumble under the weight of factual scrutiny. Her real motivations, the months of resentment and prejudice that had driven her to make the false report, became increasingly difficult to hide behind claims of public safety concerns. Dr. Walsh's documentation proved crucial to the investigation. Buddy's training records, behavioral evaluations, and certification paperwork painted a clear picture of an animal that had been specifically selected and trained for his gentle temperament and ability to provide comfort to people in distress. This dog completed over 200 hours of specialized training. Dr. Walsh explained to Detective Rodriguez during their interview. He was evaluated by multiple behavioral specialists and passed every test for therapy dog certification. The idea that he could be considered dangerous is not just wrong, It's professionally absurd. The veterinarian provided detailed documentation showing Buddy's interactions with hundreds of people over his 3 years as a certified therapy dog. Hospital visits, school programs, senior centers, grief counseling sessions, all documented with testimonials from staff and participants who praised Buddy's gentle nature and intuitive ability to provide comfort. In my professional opinion, Dr. Walsh continued, this animal represented the absolute opposite of a public safety threat. He was specifically trained to de-escalate tense situations and provide calming presence to people in distress. The officers who shot him were responding to completely false information. As the investigation progressed, the Martinez family struggled to cope with their loss while dealing with the media attention and legal complexities surrounding the case. Miguel had stopped eating regularly and was experiencing nightmares that left him crying for Buddy in the middle of the night. Elena channeled her grief into activism, creating social media campaigns and organizing community support for police reform. Carlos took leave from his job as a construction supervisor to help his family navigate the legal process and media attention. Sarah, still recovering from her own emotional trauma, found herself thrust into the role of spokesperson for a cause she had never wanted to champion. We just want people to understand who Buddy really was, Sarah told Amanda Chen during a follow-up interview. He wasn't a dangerous animal. He was a member of our family who dedicated his life to helping people heal from trauma. The fact that he died because of someone's lie is something we'll never get over. The community response grew stronger as more details about the case became public. Vigils were held in the local park, with hundreds of residents bringing their own pets to honor Buddy's memory. The Martinez family was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, with neighbors providing meals, legal assistance, and emotional support during their darkest days. Animal rights organizations took up the case as an example of the need for better protocols when police respond to animal-related calls. The Therapy Dog Alliance, the organization that had certified Buddy, used the case to advocate for enhanced training that would help first responders distinguish between genuinely dangerous situations and false alarms. Karen Hutchinson found herself increasingly isolated as the truth about her motivations became clear to her neighbors. The woman who had moved to Maple Street, seeking a perfect suburban environment, discovered that her actions had destroyed the very community harmony she claimed to value. Former friends stopped speaking to her, and local businesses began refusing her service as word spread about her role in Buddy's death. The legal consequences began to unfold 6 weeks after the shooting. District Attorney Patricia Gonzalez, under pressure from animal rights groups and community activists, announced that her office would be filing charges against Karen Hutchinson for filing a false police report and reckless endangerment. Making false emergency calls that result in the death of innocent animals is not acceptable in our community, Gonzalez stated during a press conference. Mrs. Hutchinson's actions directly led to a tragic and completely avoidable death. We will prosecute this case to the full extent of the law. The officers involved in the shooting faced their own consequences as the department's internal investigation concluded. Officer Morrison was placed on administrative leave, pending additional training, while Officer Valdez was transferred to a desk position. Captain Torres announced new protocols requiring animal control consultation before officers could use lethal force in response to animal-related calls. The Martinez family filed a federal civil rights lawsuit against both the police department and Karen Hutchinson, seeking damages for the wrongful death of their therapy dog and the emotional trauma inflicted on their children. Their attorney, Maria Santos, specialized in cases involving police misconduct and had successfully won similar cases in other jurisdictions. This case represents a clear violation of this family's civil rights, Santos explained during a press conference. The police acted on false information, provided by a neighbor whose motivations appear to have been based on prejudice, rather than legitimate safety concerns. The system failed this family at every level. The trial became a focal point for broader discussions about police accountability, the rights of pet owners, and the consequences of making false emergency reports. National media outlets picked up the story, and the Martinez family found themselves representing thousands of other families who had lost beloved pets to police shootings based on questionable circumstances. During the proceedings, the extent of Karen's documentation of the Martinez family's activities became clear. Investigators found hundreds of photographs, detailed notes about the family's daily routines, and records of every complaint she had made to various city departments about perceived violations of neighborhood standards. This goes far beyond a single false emergency call. Prosecutor Jennifer Liu argued during Karen's trial. The evidence shows a pattern of harassment and surveillance that culminated in a deliberate attempt to cause harm to this family through false reporting. The defendant's actions were calculated and malicious. Karen's defense attorney attempted to portray her as a concerned neighbor who had genuinely feared for community safety, but the evidence overwhelmingly contradicted this narrative. The jury took less than 4 hours to find her guilty on all charges, including filing a false police report, reckless endangerment, and harassment. The judge, Honorable Robert Kim, imposed a sentence that reflected the serious consequences of Karen's actions. In addition to 6 months in county jail and 200 hours of community service, Karen was ordered to pay restitution to the Martinez family and undergo psychological counseling to address the underlying prejudices that had motivated her behavior. Your actions resulted in the death of an innocent animal and caused immeasurable trauma to a family, Judge Kim stated during sentencing. The court hopes that this sentence will serve as a deterrent to others who might consider using emergency services as a weapon against their neighbors. The civil lawsuit against the police department was settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, with the city agreeing to implement new training protocols and establish a fund for families whose pets are killed during police encounters. The settlement also included a public apology from the police chief and a commitment to work with therapy dog organizations to improve officer education about service animals. As the legal proceedings concluded, the Martinez family faced the challenge of healing and moving forward. Miguel's nightmares had gradually decreased with the help of professional counseling, but the 8-year-old still sometimes called for Buddy when he was scared or sad. Elena had been accepted to college with plans to study criminal justice, inspired by her experience to work toward police reform. Dr. Walsh approached the family with an unusual proposal 6 months after Buddy's death. A young golden retriever named Hope had been donated to her practice by a therapy dog organization, specifically trained to help families recover from trauma. The puppy bore a striking resemblance to Buddy, with the same gentle brown eyes and calm temperament that made golden retrievers such effective therapy animals. "I know nothing can replace Buddy," Dr. Walsh said, as she introduced Hope to the family. "But this little girl has been trained to help families heal from exactly the kind of trauma you've experienced. She's not a replacement. She's a new beginning." Miguel's face lit up for the first time in months as Hope approached him with the same gentle confidence that Buddy had always displayed. The 8-year-old knelt down as the puppy placed her head in his lap, providing the comfort that words couldn't offer. Sarah and Carlos exchanged a look that mixed grief for what they had lost, with hope for what they might gain. Elena was more cautious, her teenage heart still protecting itself from the possibility of future loss. But as Hope moved between family members with the same intuitive understanding of human emotion that had made Buddy so special, even Elena began to soften. The puppy seemed to understand that this family needed extra patience and gentleness as they learned to trust again. The community that had rallied around the Martinez family during their darkest days welcomed Hope with the same warmth they had shown Buddy. Neighbors who had provided support during the legal battles continued to check on the family, and Hope became a symbol of the community's commitment to healing and moving forward together. Karen Hutchinson served her sentence and eventually moved away from Maple Street, unable to rebuild the relationships she had destroyed through her actions. The house she had left behind remained empty for months, a physical reminder of how prejudice and hatred could poison a community. When new neighbors finally moved in, they were welcomed with the kind of genuine warmth that Karen had rejected during her time on the street. The changes in police protocols that resulted from Buddy's death extended far beyond the local department. The case became a catalyst for reform efforts in multiple states, with legislators introducing bills requiring specialized training for officers responding to animal-related calls. The Buddy Martinez Act, as it came to be known, mandated consultation with animal control professionals before officers could use lethal force against domestic animals. 2 years after the shooting, the Martinez family established the Buddy Martinez Foundation, dedicated to training first responders about therapy animals and providing support for families who lose pets during police encounters. Sarah, who had found her voice as an advocate through her family's tragedy, became the foundation's executive director. Buddy's death was a tragedy that should never have happened, Sarah said during the foundation's launch event. But if we can prevent other families from experiencing what we went through, then maybe some good can come from our loss. Buddy spent his life helping people heal from trauma. Now we're carrying on that mission in his memory. Hope had grown into a magnificent golden retriever, her training and natural temperament making her an even more effective therapy dog than Buddy had been. She regularly visited hospitals, schools, and counseling centers, providing comfort to hundreds of people who needed the healing presence that only a trained therapy animal could offer. Miguel, now 10 years old, often accompanied Hope on her visits. His own experience with loss and recovery, making him uniquely qualified to help other children process difficult emotions. Elena graduated from college with a degree in criminal justice and a specialization in community policing. Her senior thesis, titled The Buddy Martinez Case, How False Reporting and Inadequate Training Created a Perfect Storm of Injustice, became required reading in several police academies across the country. She was accepted to law school with plans to specialize in civil rights law, her career path shaped by the tragedy that had devastated her family years earlier. Carlos returned to his work as a construction supervisor, but also became involved in community oversight of police practices. His practical experience and genuine desire to prevent future tragedies made him an effective bridge between law enforcement and civilian communities. He served on the Citizen Review Board that evaluated police responses to animal-related calls, ensuring that Buddy's legacy would include real systemic change. The neighborhood on Maple Street had been forever changed by the events of that spring afternoon, but it had emerged stronger and more unified than before. The tragedy had forced residents to confront uncomfortable truths about prejudice and the power of false accusations. But it had also revealed the community's capacity for compassion and justice. Mrs. Chen, who had been among the first to speak out against Karen's harassment of the Martinez family, became the unofficial neighborhood historian, making sure that new residents understood the importance of treating all families with respect and dignity. The small memorial garden that neighbors had created in Buddy's honor became a gathering place for community events and a reminder of the values that the neighborhood chose to embrace. On quiet evenings, when Hope was playing in the same backyard where Buddy had spent his final moments, Sarah sometimes felt her beloved pet's presence in the gentle breeze that rustled through the trees. The pain of loss would never completely disappear, but it had been joined by something stronger, the knowledge that Buddy's death had meaning. that it had sparked changes that would protect other innocent animals and their families. The golden evening light that painted the Martinez backyard during Hope's playtime seemed to carry with it the warmth of justice served and healing begun. Miguel's laughter, as he threw tennis balls for Hope, echoed across the same lawn where his tears had fallen 2 years earlier, a testament to the resilience of both children and communities when they are supported by love and determination. As the sun set over Maple Street, the Martinez family gathered around their dinner table with Hope at their feet, her calm presence a reminder that even in the aftermath of tragedy, new forms of love and healing could take root. Buddy's empty collar still hung on the kitchen wall, but beside it now hung Hope's therapy dog certification, evidence that his legacy of service and compassion would continue. The story of Buddy Martinez had become more than a family's tragedy. It had become a community's journey toward justice, a nation's conversation about police accountability, and a testament to the power of ordinary people to create extraordinary change when they refuse to accept injustice as inevitable. In the end, love had proven stronger than hatred, truth more powerful than lies, and the memory of one gentle golden retriever had become a force for healing that would touch countless lives for years to come.